Hello, my name is Ilsa. I'm from the Research and Writing Center at BYU, and this is Tutor Talk. You might note, if this sounds a little weird, there is background noise. I'm in the RWC. I'm also congested and wearing a mask. So if the audio quality leaves something to be desired, I'm sorry. This is the authentic Writing Center experience, and I hope that adds ambiance somehow. Anyway, moving forward. Tutoring can get tricky. It's our first point, right? Like, we all know this isn't an easy job. That's not why we do it. And sometimes there are hard situations. And I think I've often heard from people that they're very nervous about tricky tutees, tricky situations. And so we're just going to go through three relatively common-ish kinds of vague categories of tricky situations and talk through how we would work through them. And obviously there's not like a right answer, right? There's not always a like, this is what you do, this is how you handle it. But I'm hoping that this can just help you feel a little bit more confident in how to handle things that don't go perfectly in the Writing Center. Situation 1. You do not know the genre this paper is in, or you don't understand the subject matter, or maybe it's in another language. Right, like if this is a space where anyone can come in with any piece of writing, there's gonna be pieces of writing that intimidate you, that are not what you're familiar with, where your expertise is. So I want you to just pause for a minute and talk amongst yourself or to your imaginary friend if you're watching this alone. Have you had this experience? Have people come in with papers like this? How have you handled it in the past? If not, how do you think you would handle it? What are your thoughts? Okay, coming back. Here are my tutor tips from my experience. And there's not a right answer, again. So, like, we can have different thoughts on this. But I do think it's important to remember, like, what your job is as a writing tutor. You're here to have a conversation. You're here to be a thoughtful peer. You are not here to, like, be their teacher who knows all about their subject matter. You're not here to tell them exactly how to fix their paper and make it perfect. You're here to help them figure it out for themselves. You're here to talk it through. And you do have those relevant skills, right? Like, you can't necessarily tell them if they're making an accurate analysis of a novel you've never read. You can tell them if they are structuring their paragraphs in a way that makes sense to a reader like you. You can tell them if their organization feels intuitive, or things like that are kind of just fundamentals of writing, rather than content things that you're not going to be an expert on. And even, like, I've had papers in other languages. We just talk through it, and you can totally do that to just help them think through what they're doing. You can also, if they need expertise that you don't have, you do have resources, right? You're always welcome to go to rwc.byu.edu and click resources and look through our handouts, or you can turn to the internet, or maybe your Writing Center director has resources where, like, if someone needs to know, like, a niche citation thing, you can look that up, right? Or you can read our little handout on op-eds if that's the genre they're writing and they need help with, like, genre conventions. So it's not all on you to know everything. And also, like, this is an opportunity to lean into humility, to remember your role for every other writing session is that fundamentally the tutee is the expert and you are their peer conversationalist, right? So you're not supposed to ever be able to, like, fully comprehend what they're writing and how to perfectly write it. You're supposed to help them think it through. So I'm being a little bit repetitive here, but I do think that's important, and you can't stop me from being repetitive because you're not here. So moving on, situation 2, the hot mess. You don't even know where to start with this one. Sometimes there's just a lot of things that a student is struggling with. That's very normal. That's normal for all of us, but sometimes it's a little stressful when you're tutoring. So again, take a minute, pause. Have you seen this? How have you dealt with it? How do you think you could deal with it? Okay, we're moving on now to tutor tips. First, like, take a deep breath and remember that fixing their paper isn't your job. This is not, you are required to get them an A on this paper. That is not what your job is at all. The responsibility for their paper is on them ultimately. And your responsibilities are different. One of your responsibilities is to consider their priorities and what they want to do and what they want help with. it's still important if they really care about something that doesn't seem to you to be the very most crucial thing. I think it's still worth like spending some time on what they're worried about. Because at the end of the day, like, this is about them becoming a better writer, not this piece of writing individually becoming better. And so if there's like a way that they want to become a better writer, a skill that they want to figure out, that's totally worth spending some time on. I'll keep in mind, I know different writing centers have different kind of approaches to global and local concerns or to higher order and lower order stuff. You might have been trained differently. Obviously, do whatever your director told you. But I do think like their agency and their priorities are important. At the same time, global concerns, the rubric, those are important. As you're negotiating how to spend your time, if you're like, hey, listen, you really want to talk about comma splices. People often want to talk about grammar when it's not the most important thing necessarily. Maybe they really need to figure out a comma splice, but you say, can we also talk a little bit? I'm looking at the rubric. It seems like they want a strong thesis statement, and I'm not sure you have one. Like, you can make that negotiation. As long as you remember their priorities, right? And that your job is to help them in their writing process, in their skills, and to have a conversation with them, not to solve everything. Again, I'm being a little repetitive, and that's okay. You're gonna have to forgive me. Okay, moving on to situation 3. The student is not here to engage. Prepare yourself for glowering and one-word sentences. So, okay, you know the drill. Pause, talk about, have you had this experience? How do you think you would deal with it? Okay, we're back. Here's what I've done. Here are my tutor tips. First, ask questions that take some thought. A yes or no question is probably not going to help draw someone out of their shell. But asking them some questions and giving them space to think. You can let it be silent for a little bit as they figure out how to respond, as you force them to kind of participate a little bit more. You can also consider your approach. Like, maybe you need to strike a little bit of a different tone. Maybe there's a joke that is going to make them laugh. Maybe there's a compliment you could give them. There was this one girl that came in when I started at the RWC who was a total brick wall. And then at the end of the session, I told her her dress was cute, and she lit right up. She opened up. I was like, dang, I've complimented your writing and you did not care. But I really should have like made a little bit more of that personal connection earlier on, and you might have been a lot more willing to engage. You can also lean into empathy. Like, yeah, you don't have to love that someone is like totally unwilling to engage in your session, but maybe they're having a rough day. Maybe they're really overwhelmed. Maybe coming to the writing center is really scary for them. And you can always be like, hey, I know this is like a lot if their paper is really stressful or whatever. You can acknowledge that and try to build a connection that way. You can also just be like, you know what, I'm going to be nice to them. They don't super want to be here, but that's okay. Last point, if they don't want to take advantage of the writing center, that's not your fault. You can't force them to have a positive experience. And I think you should totally like try to make it a positive experience. But if they're not using the resource that you're providing, that's on them at the end of the day. Okay. What are your takeaways? What has kept coming up in these conversations? So pause and discuss, and then I'm going to have some final thoughts. Okay, assume you've paused and discussed. I don't know if I'm leaving the appropriate pause length, but that's okay. Once again, you're going to be patient with me. One thing you might have heard me say again and again is you've got to think about your job as a tutor, right? Your role. And your role is to be a thoughtful peer. Your role is to have a conversation. Your role is to offer them something that they don't have to accept, and to listen to them and to help them figure out what to do, but not to like tell them everything how to make it perfect, and not to get them an A, and not any of those other things. So being really aware of what you can and can't do, I think is really helpful. And I promise you that as you get more experience tutoring, these things will become more intuitive to you. And some of these like tricky situations can turn into really lovely and productive sessions. So thank you so much for watching. I'm going to see if I have any more slides. Do I? I do not. And then, yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks.